Hi, you're watching Cooking with Diane. I'm Diane, and today I'm going to show you how to make an omelet. Whether you're a beginner home cook or an experienced cook, I think an omelet is a great thing to have in your culinary repertoire because it doesn't take very long to make. It's infinitely variable. You can do whatever sort of fillings you like in there, but it's also elegant enough to serve to guests, and it's one of those rare egg dishes that works for lunch or dinner as well as for breakfast. An omelet is also a really great lesson on mise en place. Because the omelet itself cooks so quickly, you really need to have everything ready for the omelet before you even start cooking it. Mise en place is a French term for put in place. So that means that you need to prepare all of your fillings, all of your ingredients, all of your equipment before you even start cooking. So first, let's think about what we want to put inside our omelet. I usually keep it to 3 or 4 items maximum. More than that, and it gets a little complicated. I always like to put some sort of cheese in my omelets. Today I have a little bit of goat cheese. I'm just going to crumble that up. And I'm going to put all of my fillings on a plate rather than in 4 different little bowls to save myself on dishes later. If you're using some sort of hard cheese like cheddar or Swiss, you'd want to grate it. And just a little bit goes a long way. I'm only making an omelet, so I only need a little bit of each thing. Now for the rest of my filling, I've chosen 3 vegetables just based on what I have in my fridge. So I have this little bit of red onion, might as well use that up. I have some mushrooms, just 3 is plenty for a single omelet. And I have some kale. So to prep these before I make my omelet, I need to chop them all up and I need to cook them all. The cooking time of the omelet itself is not long enough to cook the vegetables inside it, so you actually do need to pre-cook your vegetables. But first, let's chop them up. So here are my chopped up vegetables. I cut them all fairly small, but they don't need to be minced. If you need a little bit more guidance on how to chop these, I have a whole section of knife skills videos that show you how to hold your knife and how to chop certain vegetables. So any vegetables that are going into my omelet, I'm going to cook them. The cheese I don't need to cook in advance, and if I were putting any sort of herb in my omelet, I wouldn't need to cook that in advance because herbs are so delicate, they can just be sprinkled in raw. If I were putting some sort of meat in my omelet, I would need to cook that too. I'm going to saute all of my vegetables. You can really cook them whatever way suits your fancy. If you want to roast your mushrooms in advance, go for it. You can use butter or olive oil to cook your veggies. I'm going to use olive oil for this. And I'm going to cook each vegetable separately. They're all going in the same omelet, so I guess if you're really in a hurry, you could cook them together. I'm just going to have more control over how well they cook if I cook them each separately. So I'm just going to cook my mushrooms first. I always want to make sure my pan gets hot before I add the vegetable, and I add a little bit of oil right before I put the veggie in. And anything that goes in the pan gets a sprinkle of salt. This is going to help it break down faster and cook more evenly. As each vegetable is finished cooking, I'm going to put it right back onto this plate. I'm just going to try to keep the vegetables as separate as possible. Now the onion. I might get a mushroom or 2 in there too, it's fine. As long as your vegetables are cut small, you only need to saute them until they're lightly browned and softened. You don't need to cook them forever. Now before I reuse this pan to make the omelet, I do want to wash it out because now that I have all this brown stuff in the bottom, that's going to cause my omelet to stick to the pan. So I'm going to start with a clean pan when I make my omelet. Now that my vegetables are chopped, cooked, and ready to go, all I need to do is mix my eggs. So depending on how big your pan is and how thick you like your omelets, you can use 1, 2, or 3 eggs for a single omelet. 1 egg would be used if you have a very small pan. I'm using an 8-inch skillet, so 2 eggs is usually good to make a thin omelet in an 8-inch skillet. If you like a really thick omelet or you're super hungry, go ahead and use 3 eggs. Your eggs can either be cold straight from the refrigerator, or you can let them get to room temperature for an hour or so before you're going to cook. They'll both cook up just fine. I do find that room temperature eggs come out of the eggshell a little more easily, and they're a little bit easier to mix because cold eggs are stickier. I always crack my eggs right on the countertop rather than on the side of my bowl because I just find that I get less eggshell in my bowl that way. If you're using a clear bowl, you can also double check that you didn't get any eggshell in it by checking the bottom. Looks like I'm good. I'm going to add a pinch of salt and a little bit of pepper to my eggs. If you don't like pepper, you don't need to put in pepper, but I recommend that you do put in salt because it's going to help the eggs cook more evenly and it will help make your omelet fluffier. Some people ask me if they can add milk to this mixture. I don't add milk to my omelet mixture because I want the eggs to build a pretty robust protein structure so that it holds together when I'm folding it at the end of cooking. Adding milk to eggs will break up that protein mixture by interspersing it with fat and liquid. So milk is really great to add to your scrambled eggs. It'll make them softer, but for an omelet, it's going to make it harder to hold together. So now I'm going to whisk my eggs, and my goal is to create a homogeneous mixture that is all the same color and all the same consistency. You can use a whisk or a fork for this. To whisk more effectively, I hold my whisk all the way up in the center rather than back on the handle. This will give me more control. I'm also going to whisk towards me and up. It's sort of like a whipping motion rather than a stirring motion. I'm going to break up the yolks first. And then I'm just going to whisk my eggs together. And I find tilting the bowl helps me do this more effectively as well. So as long as you don't see any streaks of egg white in there and your mixture looks nice and homogeneous, you should be good. Okay, so let's go over here and cook my omelet. So I think I'm ready to go. I have my clean pan. I have my tool of choice, which is a rubber spatula. These are flexible, so it can really scrape around the sides to help lift the omelet out of the pan. Just make sure that you're using a rubber spatula that's made of silicone and not plastic, because a plastic spatula will melt when you touch it to a hot pan. I have my chopped cooked vegetables and my crumbled cheese, and I have my whisked eggs. One more thing that you'll want to have handy when you're cooking your omelet is an extra plate, and that's to put the finished omelet on when it's finished cooking. You're going to want to have your pan on high heat, at least to start. We want it super duper hot so it can create this non-stick coating so that the eggs don't stick to it. The pan I'm using is an all-clad stainless steel 8-inch skillet. You can use a nonstick pan for this, but as I'm going to show you, you don't have to. Once your pan is really, really hot, put in a little bit of olive oil or regular cooking oil. I wouldn't recommend butter for this because your pan's going to be so hot that the butter would start smoking. And you want enough oil to really coat the bottom of the pan, so err on the side of a little bit more than you might think. This will also help keep the omelet from sticking. The combination of the hot pan plus the oil is what makes a stainless steel pan into a non-stick pan. Now that my oil's got a chance to be nice and hot, I'm going to add my eggs. And I'm going to use the rubber spatula to really scrape all of that egg mixture out of the bowl. And if it doesn't spread out everywhere, give it a swirl to make sure it spreads everywhere in the pan. You'll see it should start congealing right away. I usually give it a second to start firming up on the bottom, but then to cook all of this runny egg that's still on top, we're going to lift it up gently from the side. So I pretend this is a compass. So I'm going to go north, south, east, and west, and just lift up each point on the compass directions. And then I tilt the pan to where I'm lifting up to let the runny egg run over to where there's some pan open. So now you can see there's not as much runny egg. I'd say the omelet is 90% cooked, right? Most of it is firm. There's still some wet looking patches, but there's nothing that's running around if I tilt the pan. And that's what I want. At this point, if you're scared that it's going to overcook on the bottom, you can always turn the heat to low. That'll give you a little bit more time to work with your fillings. So now we can start filling it. I'm going to pretend that there's a line in the center. So I'm just going to draw a line and fill just within that line, leaving room on either side to roll the omelet. So I'm going to put the fillings in a line down the center of the omelet. And I want them to go all the way from side to side. I just don't want to spread them out over the whole omelet. And the warmth from the cooked fillings and from the eggs is what's going to melt the goat cheese. This is a very well-filled omelet. You actually don't have to put this much in it. So now I have a row of fillings and room on either side. And I'm going to roll the omelet up, kind of like a little burrito. So I'm going to start with one side, and this is where it's helpful to have this rubber spatula. It should be able to just sneak right under the omelet. I'm going to fold that side over the fillings. And if it wants to flip back for whatever reason, you can start tilting the pan to help hold it in place. Now turn off the heat. Get your plate ready. And we're going to roll the whole thing from the pan onto the plate. So I've only rolled it 1/3 so far. We're going to gently lift it up, make sure there's no side sticking. And we're going to kind of scoop it off the pan onto the plate, tilting the pan and pushing with the rubber spatula. And give it one last final push. Woo! To help it roll all the way over. So by tilting the pan, you can kind of roll the omelet right onto the plate so the seam side is facing down. So this is our finished omelet. So this is our finished omelet. I love to serve it with a little salad on the side to make it into a whole meal. I'm going to cut into it to show you what it looks like on the inside. So there's our inside shot. You can see all of the fillings. The omelet itself is nice and thin but holds together. It's meant to be a recipe that you can do at any time as long as you have eggs and some sort of filling. I'm not going to eat it in front of you because I think that's rude, But I would love it if you tried cooking this yourself and let me know how it tastes in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.